Hey guys, it is Kat and Nat, and exciting news. This is our new podcast, Parenting Teens Unfiltered. This is for people with tweens or teens in their life, ages 9 to 17. You need this. You are going to download it because it is a game changer, and we created it because we needed it. Go subscribe now and check out the episode. Hey guys, this is the Kat and Nat Parenting Unfiltered podcast, where we talk about all of the hot topics going on, or some of the hot topics, because quite frankly, it moves way too fast for any of us to even catch up with. If you are not part of the Common Parent, that is the one-stop shop for easy, digestible, there I go, let me see if I can get that out, digestible tools where they are sent to your inbox so you can read them and carry on with your day. We made sure to make them quick and fast and just something to put in your back pocket and build skills and knowledge as time goes on. And we thought, we do have an app where you can go and search topics that pertain to you at that moment, but we know parenting's a journey, and we know it's a long journey, and we know that what is impacting you today might not be impacting you in a week from now. So to make it easy, we thought, let's teach and build skills through emails where you can just read them and say, I'm going through that. I want to read more. I'm not yet there yet, but it sounds interesting. But here's some skills that I can take with me throughout my day, which is usually communication, how to get through a power struggle, how to diffuse when your teenager is so pissed at you, you're not sure what to do. Really just the place for parents, like you're talking to best friends, but with education backed by it, because if that made sense, educational answers. We bring the best experts and break down the interviews for you so you can carry on with your day and learn in 5. Better in 5 is what we like to call it. If you are not up for a membership yet, you can definitely go to our newsletter, and that is also an amazing source of information. It's free. It comes once a week. We try not to bombard you, but we want to make sure that also you have the tools you need. The Common Parent membership is, it's one of the best investments I have ever made in my life, and we created it because we needed it. So head on over to thecommonparent.com. You are getting one of the interviews from the Common Parent. And if you are a member, you get everything broken down, and then what to do and how to implement it, and how to become a better parent. I hope you guys enjoy the interview, and we so appreciate you being part of this community. Even if you're just listening and being here, it just shows that we're better together because we all need each other. That's how we learn. That's how we grow. And that is exactly how we as a community get through this thing called parenting. Hope you enjoy the interview.
Guys, we're really excited to have Marybeth on the podcast today. I have to say, today we're going to be talking about how to know if your kids are hanging out with the wrong group, friends, boyfriend, whatever, or partner. But when it said MPH after your name, I'm like, masters in something. I had to Google it. Masters in physical health?
Close. Public health.
Public health. There's like a whole master's in actual public health.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
Wow. That's amazing. And you are a mom.
You have 2 adult children, which is it's just even better for us because I can't imagine all the things you've already been through. You're a bit ahead of us.
Yeah. I call them emerging adults because I don't think we're really adults until we're 50 maybe?
Oh my gosh, I still have some years to go.
I don't think I'm an adult still.
That's actually no, that's over 50. We have some years. That's great news.
So I feel like this is a topic that no one talks about because it is like there's so many other problems. But to me, this may be one of the biggest problems because I guess what parents don't realize is your influence gets less and less the older they get, and their friends really matter, right?
They become everything. And it's also, you feel like it's not really something you need to look into until it happens to you, and then you're faced with it and you're like, I don't know how to handle this because my opinion matters less than their friends right now.
Right. But we think it matters less, but research shows that we really are still the greatest influence on their lives. So even though our interactions with them, you may be constantly thinking, oh my gosh, they're not listening to what I'm saying. They're rolling their eyes all the time. They're snarky back at me, but really, truly, when it comes down to it, we still have the greatest influence on our teens.
I love to hear that because it's so easy to forget that. But when we're reminded by an expert like yourself, and just to say to yourself, yeah, no matter how much this relationship feels like it's not successful, I am still my opinions and just my love and everything is still the biggest influence.
Even if they're in love.
Ooh,
even if
yes.
they're in love.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
I know. Yeah, we really are. It's a huge responsibility. And a lot of times we kind of step back because we think they're not listening to us. They're, like their friends are so much more important, which we want their friends to be important. Their peer relationships when they're teenagers is huge. It's how they learn to separate from us, get their own identities. And we want them to be social, but we still have so much influence over what they do and think.
I'm going to call that the good news.
What do we do if we don't like, what if we don't like their friends? What are we saying?
Or we've heard bad things through the grapevine about kids that your kid have been hanging out with.
Yeah. And I think a lot of times we do just kind of assume, maybe we've heard something bad about a kid. We know that their older sibling maybe is not a great kid. We don't like the way they look. And so we make a lot of assumptions about like, oh, I don't think I want my kid hanging out with that other kid or dating them. So we really have to come from a place of being inquisitive rather than judgmental. Like, I think the most important thing is just asking a lot of questions when you're having conversations and you're remaining calm about things. Questions like, so what do you like to do with this new friend? How is that kid a good friend to you? Because maybe they are really in a situation already where they're thinking this isn't a high quality friend and I maybe shouldn't be in this relationship. But if you can draw some stuff out by asking questions, I think that's really helpful because, as we know, the judgment is not what they want to hear.
Yes. Marybeth, when I'm like sitting there and I'm thinking about like the moods that my teen can be in, and when I want to ask a bunch of questions and I'm saying like, oh, like those kind of things. And she's just like, what are you talking about? Like, why don't you like her? Why are you being so judgmental? Like, is there a good way to get all these questions in without being like totally shut down? And you just don't like, you're just judging me.
Yeah, I think the most important thing is choosing when and where to talk to our teenagers, because we know they constantly have a phone in their hand. They're busy doing homework, playing their sport, going to practices, whatever. And you have to find a time where they really are receptive to talking to you. Like I always say, after dark, like don't even try, unless they come to you and they're kind of in a mood where they want to like maybe lay on the couch next to you and, you're giving them a back rub or something. But I think in the car on long drives is a great place to talk, or take them out for a meal. Like my son, especially, if I would take him out to get some good food, he would open up and talk about so many things just because he was happy. He was sitting and eating food.
Do you invite them over, the person that you're like questioning?
Yes, I would definitely encourage parents to do that, because a lot of us just maybe have very brief interactions with these kids, a minute here, a minute there. And I would definitely invite whoever you may have concerns about over to your house for a dinner and see what they're like when they're sitting down, because you may learn that they're completely different than what you thought they were.
And if they're not?
And if they're not, then yeah, it's time to have some honest conversations with your kids and set some boundaries, because if you suspect that they're not a high quality friend, you may have not ever made boundaries. I think a lot of teen parents, they just kind of go with the flow, like, well, we don't have to talk about this issue until it happens, which isn't really a great idea. I say, those family meetings that you hear about, like, sit down with your kids and talk about boundaries and consequences, because if you don't, you're going to hear back like, well, you never told me that. Like, you never told me I couldn't come home at this time or go to this person's house. And if you have kind of some set boundaries and some natural consequences in place, things will go much better.
And I think also, like, even just having a conversation with your children about what makes a high quality friend.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah.
They might not know.
those questions that, how is this kid a good friend to you? Or what is it that you think this boy, is he a good person to date? Like trying to draw those things out, get them thinking about those things. Because face it, when we're teenagers, we want friends who are fun and popular. And maybe those aren't the most high quality friends for your kid, but they haven't even really thought that through yet.
I have a tough one for you. So I know that in a lot of the smaller towns, the kids go to school from elementary to like university and college. Like they're together their entire time.
Yeah.
What can we do? Like when, that person, it's a frenemy. Like, I think that that's a really realistic thing for a lot of our youth, even who aren't necessarily in a small town, because they're in the same school and their community is like this big. And what's that frenemy language where you can't really not be friends with them, but you got to be friends with them, but you want to have boundaries, but they're like at every party, they're, everywhere you are. How can we help them navigate that when, let's say, they're not necessarily wanting to befriend them, but it's definitely someone in their circle.
They can't get away from them.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a tough one. That's a really tough one. That phrase quiet quitting that became popular last year with, adults who don't really want to do a ton, put in a lot of effort at work. I think that's something that we can teach our teens to kind of do. Like, you don't have to hang out with that kid as much. You can, let me help you maybe make some excuses and set some better boundaries so that you can kind of quietly pull away so that the friendship or the relationship just kind of dies a natural death. Like there's not a big, like, okay, that's it, I don't want to be friends with you anymore, but just like a kind of slow, quiet, relaxed, just, you start to maybe hang out with some other people or get into some other activity, something where there's a slow kind of apartness that comes.
Is like frenemy and that the girl dynamic, and I just say girl because it seems to be so cliche, but like, is that still something that teens are experiencing where they're in the group, but there is like a dynamic where if you don't get along and like there's a party, but like, do you have to invite you're having 10 people over, do you have to invite the person over you don't like? Or like, what are we teaching them? Because I know this is a really hot topic right now of like inclusion, exclusion, and, bullying and what that looks like. Like, I think we put a lot of unrealistic pressures on teens because we wouldn't want to invite someone over who ruins our lives, like just by showing up in a room. So, but it is mean to not include. So what, do you have any advice for that? Like, I do think a lot of moms are dealing with that one or two person in their child's life who is in it, but is not making their life easier.
Yeah. I think a good thing to do in that situation would be to say like, well, maybe try it one time, invite that person that frenemy that you really don't love hanging out with and see how it goes. And, maybe in a group setting, it won't be as bad, but I definitely think it's okay to encourage your kids to say, you don't have to invite everybody. That's not the real world. Like we're trying to teach our kids, life, the real world has consequences for every behavior, and you're never going to be invited to everything you want to go to. And it's not the real world to have to invite every single person to every activity.
That's true. And it's unfair in a way, we're like, just be nice. And they're like, but they're not nice to me. Like,
right.
What's that boundary of, like, are teens mature enough to put the boundary in of like, can they verbally say why do you want to be friends with me? Like, you don't like, is that realistic, or are we expecting way too much for them to be able to verbalize maturely how they feel?
Yeah, I think it is realistic for most teens, younger teens, especially. Like, a 14-year-old is not going to be able to verbalize emotional boundaries the way an 18-year-old can, obviously.
Right.
So we have to help them. We have to coach them. Like, I know it sounds dumb, but sometimes like play acting a situation with your kid or having an older sibling, play act with them. Like, what would you say if this person says, why didn't you invite me over to your house on Saturday night? What your teen can say back to them and how they can do it in a respectful way so that they're not coming across as,
I forget what it's like to be a teenager, obviously, but is there like, is there any, again, good news that we could tell our kids that when they do respectfully put up the boundaries with someone who isn't feeling like a positive person in their life that I know we can't know what everyone's response would be, but some teens unexpectedly respond well to like putting up boundaries? I don't know if I'm being clear, but like should they be afraid? Should they be afraid that person's gonna basically be like, how dare you say that to me? I'm the king of the world. Screenshot it, share it to everybody. You're no longer popular. You're out of this group. Like, or should we have higher expectations of teenagers when they're being presented in a respectful way with a boundary?
Yeah. Some teens you can have high expectations for.
Okay.
Others you just can't. So you really do have to, kind of talk to your kid about, this person may get really mad. This person may just not even get it. If you're trying to set a boundary, they're just not really there yet. And so you just kind of have to tell them, talk to people. Like, don't post things, don't text things. If you're encouraging your teen to kind of have a breakup with a frenemy, have them do it in person.
And I can only expect, Marybeth, that if your kid comes back and reports to you how it went, it's a great conversation to say, like if it was a really bad experience, like, see, like, is that really the kind of person you want in your life anyways?
Right. And it's also really helpful to talk to them about similar experiences you've had as both a teen and an adult, because we all have those situations. We have coworkers, we have neighbors that at some point in your life, you just think, I really don't want to hang out with this person anymore. It's not a good back and forth. I walk away. I don't feel good. And if you can tell your teen, this is what I've done, it's uncomfortable, but you kind of sometimes have to have those conversations, that can be really helpful as well.
I have a hot topic for you. Do you ever text the other parent or email as a parent? Parent to parent.
I would say no, unless there's some kind of serious safety issue involved.
At what age do we as parents stop texting the parent, or is it okay at any age? Like, just literally curious, because I think that a lot of parents get involved.
Yes, they do.
For me, I kind of stopped at high school. Middle school is so difficult, as we know, for so many kids, that I think there still was a bit of back and forth with moms. But by the time they get to high school, like I said, unless it's something serious that you're concerned about, health, safety, I would step back and try to, let the kids take care of it.
I know. It's so right, because, you never know where that parent's coming from, how much they already know, already. But I'm like, if my kid is doing anything bad, whether they're being disrespectful to someone, they're doing drugs or drinking, I'm just like, I feel like I want to just put like a PSA.
Please tell me.
Please just text me. I'm fine. I won't be mad at you. I want any inside information. But that's not always the case.
Reasonable.
What if it's what if even if it's just like, I know your kid is like vaping and doing drugs, is that
I still would just say that's kind of their choice, and you can talk to your own kid about it, but I don't think it's a good place to go.
Okay, so I know.
Let's talk about love.
Well, I think that we have got to the point where they know how to handle someone they don't want in their life.
Mm-hmm.
But what if really it is, you're watching them become different people because of the friends they're with, so their influence has changed, and it's not necessarily a good influence. So they are skipping school because of the people they're with, or they are experimenting, and you see a change in their behavior from what they were because of their friend group. What are you doing, whether it's a boyfriend, girlfriend, or partner? Like, what are we doing to help, like, pull their head out of there so they can see us again?
Because they're so blind that they're loving being with this person.
Yeah. And again, conversation that is inquisitive and is asking them a lot of questions and not being judgmental, but setting those boundaries is really important. You have to talk to your kids about what you're willing to accept and what you're not. And if you can explain to them what, natural consequences are, and if it makes sense to them, and they know beforehand, like, if I do X, Y, or Z, the car keys are gone for a week, or, whatever your consequence is, if it makes sense to them, like, it's it's going to work because you're the parent. Like at the end of the day, you are the parent. You can set your rules, you can change your rules, but if you're talking to your kids, you're being communicative about why you're setting these rules, it's going to go a long way.
How many in your experience, or like that you, because I know there's no real stat, but like I think parents get to a place where the teenager no longer, you feel like they don't hear you, so it's like, what, you can't, I'm 16 and I'm bigger than you, I'm walking out the door and I'm not listening to you. Like that's a very hard place to be in, and I think it's a realistic one. How are you knowing? I know you say that your influence matters, but is there times in their teenage years that it just doesn't, how do you keep showing up when it just feels like they're not listening and the consequences don't really matter because they are 16 and can walk out the door
and maybe have their own job and make their own money?
Yeah.
Yeah, that is hard. I always go back to that. It takes a village to raise a child. Like, find people that can help you with this. Like maybe your kid has an older cousin that went through something similar as a teen, or maybe, an aunt or an uncle or even a grandparent sometimes can impart some wisdom from, somewhere in their life that will kind of help the kid realize, like, especially if it's someone who's not a parent, that other person may kind of make them realize, wow, like I've been a jerk to my mom, or I really should listen to them a little bit more. Like reach out, and maybe it's a school counselor or just another adult in your life that can kind of help you out.
Yeah, that's a good suggestion, because I don't think I would have thought about that, but like off the top of my head, I can think of a few people that if my kid was willing to listen to and it wasn't me, I mean, I feel like even just that act of putting your kid in touch with someone else makes your kid realize, this is really important to my mom, and my mom wants me to make this connection, and she's trying to find ways. This must be something bigger than maybe I might know. They might deep down think.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've also found a lot of teens will talk a lot more to their friends' parents. So maybe you could, engage your friend and say, hey, will you have the girls over Friday night? And maybe you sit down and you all start talking about whatever.
Yeah.
Yes.
Totally.
I used to hear a lot more about my
carpooling.
kids.
That's why you carpool.
Exactly.
You hear everything. Oh my God, they forget you're in the car. It's crazy.
Yeah.
What for the parents who are listening and feel like, the advice of being inquisitive, because often it's a tumultuous relationship and they're like, I have been inquisitive. Are there some kids who just need to go through a phase and you have to let them go through the phase, but you be there for them? So you're like planting seeds, but you just keep showing up. Like, I think that that's really hard to grasp, because you want to put your boundaries in. So let's say you're inquisitive and they're not listening. Like, is there a place where you're like, I'm really sorry, but I for your safety, I can't let you out with this person? Like, are there boundaries you put in as parents when we're seeing concerning behaviors?
Yes, because absolutely, there are some teens that, are much more honest and open with their parents than others. Some of us have kids who you don't hear about situations until months later when they've had time to process it, because they're just not really verbal kids. So yeah, you do. And if you're coming from a place of love and concern, there might be a time where you just have to say, I have information that I know that I really don't want you hanging out with this kid, and I'm really sorry. But right now, that's kind of the way it's going to have to be.
Yeah. Oh. And then I think about, there's the friend thing. And I think that, like, that's obviously, if your friends are really important.
Yeah.
But then the time where your kid is experiencing falling in love for the first time, this is a brand new feeling. It is so intense. And they just want to, like, please that person, be with them all the time,
not share anything with you because they are in love.
And and obviously we have no idea what it's like to be in love for the first time, or like, we've never been there, of course. And it's intense, and not necessarily maybe that it's like a bad influence, but it's just like, it's taking over their whole world, and they're not even seeing their friends as much. And we don't know if it's good or bad, but either way, it seems so intense that it feels like they're missing out on other things that are important in their life.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a hard one, because as we all know, the hormones are raging, and especially if it's a first love and it's, overwhelming. And like you said, all they want to do is be with that person. And a lot of those times you just kind of have to remember, like, natural consequences are going to take over. Like if they're spending too much time with this kid and their grades start to slip, like they're going to have to deal with that. You know, those are things that you can say, I see this may be happening because of, you know, your time suck, whatever it may be, a friend, a boyfriend. And, you know, you need to think about the consequences of your relationship. And we have to let them fail when they're young. It's so hard to do, but we have to let them fail sometimes. And that's the best way to learn.
Don't sit with them and do their homework because they were us out all weekend with their significant their partner having fun, and then they're like, oh my god, do you want Monday? And you're like, I'll do it for you.
Let them fail. It's the best lesson.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is there any concerns when they ditch their friends for or is it natural when they like just kind of suck into a world of one person and kind of let go of everything? I mean, we can think of our friends in high school who literally were like married in grade 9 and 10th and 9th grade. Is that like something we have influence over at that time, or are we just sending small messages like you might want to bite your like? Is there anything you can do?
Those small messages, what you said, exactly. You can say things with love and concern. But I think it's best to kind of let those ride the course, you know, like, again, the natural consequences of spending all your time with this kid. Here are things that might happen. Think about this, you know. It is super hard if they're in love and they are acting like a married couple when they're 16. It's, you know, you don't want to create a wedge where they completely resent you. And then
I've heard of people like changing their schools and universities to be with the person they were with in high, like that's real. And so we're just like, we just have to let them do it, right?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, you ultimately you do, but you can say things, you can talk about things, you can ask questions because like I said, your influence might be more than you think. And that happened with a lot.
Not your disappointment, right? Like is there a distinction between disappointment and influence? Because you don't want them to do something because they don't want to disappoint you. You want them to do something because they want to do it, I'm assuming.
Yes, you do want them to do things because they have kind of thought this is the best thing for me to do. Whenever you're going to have a conversation like that, where you are kind of trying to steer, I think it's always best to just start with telling them how proud of them you are, how much you love them. You know, if you're starting out from a place of concern and love, it's always going to go much better.
Because my kids are always like, you're disappointed in me. And I'm like, no, I'm not, but I know you want me to do this. And I'm like, I actually don't care. Yeah. You know, it's like they want to do it because you want them to do it, but not for themselves. So gosh, it's such a hard thing. Wow.
It really is. Stepping back is so hard because we feel like, you know, we've tried to control our kids' lives so much up to this point where we have to start to step back, and it's scary. But communication really is the biggest key
to everything, to every relationship.
It's so hard. I don't know why we don't have communication classes in school, but it just seems like everything across the board is communication, but no one's taught it.
Right. Exactly. I think that's turning around a bit, you know, with more of an emphasis on mental health. Now our kids are much more open about talking about things like anxiety and depression. So I think it is getting better, but it's going to take a while because teens are notorious, you know, for zip it, you know, I'm going to talk to my friends, but I don't want to be honest with my parents.
Wow. Well, you have been insightful for us, I think, in bringing it back to the basics, which I think we all need the reminder of, because as parents, we like to overcomplicate things so much.
Yeah, we overthink things a lot.
Marybeth, where can everybody find out more about this, more information, and more of you?
Well, I am a staff writer for a couple different sites. I think a great site for parents of teens is Raising Teens Today. I write for them regularly. For those that have a little bit older teens who are already starting to think a lot about college, Grown and Flown is an excellent site that I write for. And Collegiate Parent is another one that has a lot of great information.
Wow. And then everyone listening, I guess we're all in it together. We're all going through it and no one's uniquely alone, because it feels like we are sometimes as parents to teenagers, but we're not.
We're not. Reach out to those friends and sisters and neighbors, because everyone has some wisdom for you.
Yes.
And a story.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for taking time to enlighten us and share some light. And I mean, you're sort of through it. I know they're emerging adults, but you're through the teenagers of, that's big congratulations.
Thank you. It does get better for all of you out there in the trenches. I promise you it gets better, and you get to the point where you're like, damn, I raised some great kids. I love to spend time with these people. So
okay, that's great news.
Good news. You were just full of good news.
Let's leave it at that. Thank you so much, Marybeth.
Thank you for having me.
Bye. Take care.
Bye.